I'm Andrea Lechner-Becker, and I'm here today to share with you a little bit about how partner marketing and ABM intersect. Let's get started. All right, can everyone see my screen? Don't you love having to say that like 4 times a day, 5 times, 8 times a day? Anyways, this is how to leverage partners for ABM success. On the agenda, first, an introduction. Who the hell am I? Second, why partner marketing with all of the options that you have to choose from? Third, the intersection between ABM and partner marketing. And then next steps. Where do you get started? What do you do next? So, who dis? This is me, Andrea Lechner-Becker. I am CMO at LeadMD. LeadMD loves our lime green, so that's what that sweater is representative of. And I also used to consult before I became CMO here at LeadMD. And so I'm an ex-ABM consultant. So I went from having to tell my clients what I thought that they should do to actually having to do it myself. And I've had a lot of learnings from that experience that I'm excited to share with you today. And also I'm a swearing enthusiast. I'm gonna try not to swear, but you've now been warned that you might hear a 4-letter word. And then here's how to connect with me on the social medias. That's my LinkedIn and my Twitter. And who is LeadMD? What is this company that I work for? Do we sell medical devices? All great questions. The answer to the last one is no. So we are a trusted partner of Adobe. So I have run the Adobe partnership first from the delivery side for 7-8 years, and then now through the partner marketing side. So again, that's the lens that I take to kind of give you this advice that you should be thinking about partner marketing as part of your ABM strategy. We love Adobe. We win a lot of awards, us and our clients. We have been a partner for over a decade, and we've done just a ton of implementations of Marketo and then Visible, which they acquired. And so we love Adobe. Adobe loves us. We partner together on a bunch of stuff. That's what you need to know for this presentation. So why partners? This is something that we call our performance marketing framework. You can see that there's just basically marketing on a screen here. So you have all of the strategic elements to your marketing, the research, the audience segmentation, the product strategy, brand strategy, all of the things that you need to figure out, what do we want to do? Who do we want to be when we grow up? And then you have all of the stuff in what we like to term the messy middle here. You've got the process and planning of, okay, now how do we more tactically try to get these things into programs that go out into the market? Then you've got technology and data, again, infrastructure for how to do all of this, and the people that are going to push all of the buttons and make it happen. And then on the right-hand side, you've got all of the programs. So underneath all of those things, you've got insights and analytics, what's working, what's not, what do we have to therefore go back and rethink from a strategy perspective, probably replan, maybe get some new technology to make it happen, train our people what we want to do, all of those things. So to my question at the top of this, like, why pick partner enablement when you have all of these other things? You have sales enablement, you have demand generation, you have audience acquisition. Why focus on partner enablement? But before we get there, we're going to talk a little bit about that technology component. So most people have a really big objective, right? Your CEO maybe says, we're looking to grow 30% year over year. We need to do $100 million in net new revenue, whatever your objective is as an organization. Most people kind of start with technology, right? So if you need to move the needle in any way, shape, or form, most people, and especially LeadMD's clients, are purchasing Adobe technology. And what do you need to actually make that work? So that's where you're starting to layer on strategy. Then you actually move it over to tactics, right? Social media and demand generation via email and all of these sorts of things, right? And then you've got your planning phase, and then you've got all of the things that connect to all of these things, right? So you've got technology connected now to your planning in maybe a project management system or whatever that looks like. And then you've got all the people to like make all of this stuff work, right? So one of the core reasons to work with partners is it's basically basically a way to double all of your people, right? So it's kind of a cheat in my mind for you to replicate yourself and get more done by connecting with a partner. But that sounds good, but like, what are the actual stats that you will then go and sell this idea to your executive team with? So one, you get more budget. So most vendors, at least the ones that you are going to want to pilot this kind of program with, they're going to give you money to do these things. So some of that money is primarily, or I should say most of the time, the partner budget that you get from your vendors is going to be set aside for the purpose of actually generating demand. So you're going to be using it for content syndication. You're going to be using it to run digital ads, all of those sorts of things. Some vendors will allow you enough budget to actually staff your team or buy certain technology. But for the most part, it's demand generation kind of functions. The second thing is more engagement, right? So roughly 11% of marketers say that their partnership posts are some of their most successful. So people, even your consumers like it, basically, right? So like what we've covered already is you get to kind of replicate yourself without having to pay for it, and you'll get additional budget, and your customers are gonna like it. And then the fourth thing is that your customers like it so much that a lot of people who have very successful partnerships, a big portion of their revenue is sourced by those partners. So in my opinion, ABM plus partners equals happiness. And so I'm sure that there are plenty of sessions that you're listening to about what is ABM, what are the basics. So I'm looking to fast forward past a lot of that conversation and go right into how you can leverage the principles of ABM to make your partner program successful. So as a snapshot version of like ABM, you basically have to build your ABM foundation and then figure out who you want to target, engage with those accounts, and then close the deal. Super simplified, but you get the idea. So more tactically, the way that LeadMD thinks about account-based marketing is we have to understand our buyers. So that's sort of fundamental, right? We have to understand what value does that customer or potential customer have to us, and are we a good fit for what they need? So there's lots of ways to do that in fancy projects and all of these sorts of things, but that's fundamentally the first step, right? Understanding our buyer. Then we have to uncover the signals. So in LeadMD's business, so we are a services-based business, we do marketing projects with people. Not every company always needs our service, right? So even if a company attends a webinar like this as an example, that doesn't necessarily mean that if you, dear listener, need LeadMD's help to execute on ABM, right? Like maybe you're in the process of just understanding it, or maybe you own ABM and you are like, that's my whole job. Like, why would I work with a consulting firm to help me with ABM when like, that's what I'm supposed to be doing? So we need to understand what kind of intent do these organizations have? Because, and this is, I would say, pretty typical for most B2B organizations, that not everybody who's a potential customer for you is ready for your services or product right now. There's the other common use case of maybe your contract term is like 3 years, and it's very common that if a prospect of yours is in a current contract for 3 years and it takes a year to onboard onto a new one, like if they just signed, you're at least 3 years away from your first contract with that customer, right? So intent and sort of timeliness is really important. And you're looking for hacks. Hacks is maybe a negative word. Shortcuts to uncovering the signals that indicate that somebody's interested in you now. So they're the right fit, they have a high value to you as an organization, and like now is the time to reach out. So once now is the time to reach out, then the next thing is, well, what are you going to say? What are you going to do? So the next sort of component of this is to create playbooks, and then transform those playbooks into actual processes and platforms, and then get everyone on board, right? Train your salespeople, train your marketers, train your executives on what to expect for all of this. Make sure that you're setting the right kind of expectations with them on what results will and will not look like, and change management. So that's just ABM, right? So then the question, I think, obviously, is how do we actually execute to all of these things if we're including partners? So instead of just understanding the buyer, this really becomes agreeing on the buyers, right? So maybe your potential buyers, as is the case with us in Adobe, pretty much anybody who buys Adobe products should or could buy LeadMD products, but like, who are we going to target and where are we going to put our focus as a combined team? Then uncovering the signals really becomes about assigning responsibility for those signals. So if you think about your own use case when you're within your four walls, right, you can see who's on your website, right? So maybe even if you're using an intent provider like Bombora or 6 Sense or Demandbase, right? If you're using those kinds of products to understand intent typically, because again, their whole purpose and value prop in your tech stack is the idea that they're going to give you third-party data, right? So most marketers are very good at understanding first-party data, right? Who's on my website, who's filling out forms, who's opening my emails, who's doing all of these things. But the intent gives you all of those details that are happening on third-party. Once you bring partners in, it does complicate things just a little bit because you don't have access. Like, I don't know who's on Adobe's website, right? So like, now I have to create more structure and definition around, okay, what does your lead scoring model look like? What are your, how are we going to make sure that if somebody that's on our target list gets onto your website, like, how are we going to make sure that we're pivoting and making sure in a very agile way that we're all meeting that customer where they need to be? What does the playbook look like for your drift bot, right? Like, we have to kind of discuss all of those elements and assign roles and responsibilities at a level that is slightly easier if you're just doing this within your four walls. So then you still are just creating an informed playbook at that point, right? So again, mostly you're identifying who's going to own what sort of things, and then what are we going to do with that information once it gets in. And again, you're just translating that into your platforms and your process. Again, this becomes slightly more complex because here you're going to want to think through integrations, because again, you're going to be in completely different systems, completely different CRMs, completely different websites, completely different drift, completely different marketing automation systems. So all of that separation means that you just have to spend more time thinking about who is going to have the responsibility to do what, and then how, if at all, can we best connect our systems so that we don't have to do too much manually. And then the training also becomes a little bit more complex, right? So instead of just training sales and marketing and kind of saying like, our CEO wants this to happen, do it. Now you have to create organizational buy-in, right? And so now you might have an alliances team that you have to bring in. You might have many different sales teams. When we work with Adobe, they have a lot of different breakdowns for the size of customer that someone is, right? So if you have territory versus growth or some of their internal terms, and they have people aligned to territory and growth. And so if we want to work with both of those teams, now we have to create and evangelize with two different leader sets, and then all of the people that roll up to them. And so it's a much more time intensive and careful and calculated kind of buy-in process, but super important. And again, the results speak for themselves. This stuff does work. And so, like, how do you get started? Now what? So before we get into that, I can sense people being like, this is never going to work, right? Like, or if this is so great, why doesn't everybody do it? And there are some very real blockers to executing on this grand master plan of mine. One is that reporting structure can be a beast, right? So a lot of times partner marketing either reports into sales potentially because they report into sales and or alliances or other forms of structure make it so that it's not necessarily marketing first, it's a little more sales first as an approach. But the great thing about ABM is that it is both marketing and sales coming together. So partners, even if partners report into sales, it's a really slick, nice, easy place to sort of start seeing how you can do partner marketing in an ABM approach. Then you have budgets. So again, if your partner budget is different than your overall marketing budget, it can sometimes be hard to figure out where you're spending what. And then the biggest concern is that whatever you're doing with partners is not aligned to the overarching marketing strategy. So you definitely want to make sure that if you're doing ABM, not as a pilot, right? Like if the whole organization has adopted an ABM go-to-market, then partners should just nicely fit in. If all of marketing is doing demand gen and you just want to do ABM with partners, it can be positioned as a pilot, but it still shouldn't be absent of the rest of the marketing strategy, right? Like don't cut marketing out of it, because that's a serious no-no, and it's not going to be very successful eventually. All right, so now we're on to explicit next steps. One, you got to remove the blockers, right? So if you feel like you can't do this because partner is in another place in the organization, or you don't have budget, or whatever that looks like, use the results to evangelize why this is such a great thing and potentially a good place to test ABM. Next, identify who you want to do this with, right? So most companies do not have one partner. We don't have just Adobe either. They're just my favorite. And I would say of the 24 partners that we work with fairly closely, I really only co-market with 5 of them. So Adobe is my number one. I co-market with them the most. And then the other 4 are other technology partners that I do market with, but maybe once a quarter, as opposed to every single week, having a weekly standing call and in a Slack sort of relationship with them. So you want to identify where's your lowest hanging fruit, who is the partner that, one, has the right attitude, right? So on the reciprocal side of your excitement to do this sort of a strategy, you also need the partner to be equally as excited and show up with you. So who's the best one to do that with? That should be a collaborative exercise in figuring out where you want to try to focus your energy. Then the third is now it's just time to execute. So remember this slide that was in there, right? You need to tactically do very specific things with your partners. Again, you know, the last step in this little piece here is to align all of the organization and your executives, and from a change management lens, make sure managers are talking and evangelizing this whole idea with their direct reports and that whole thing. The earlier you can get started on that, the better. It's not just the last thing, because you should literally wait until the very end to do this. You should, as a part of change management philosophy in general, be seeding a lot of these initiatives, ideas, tactics, tasks, be seeding them early in this process so that as you continue to build this out, you're keeping people posted on how close you are to launch and all of the timeline around all of these different areas. So again, I'm Andrea Lechner-Becker, a big fan of ABM and of partner marketing. If you have any questions on this rapid run through of kind of best practices around partner marketing with ABM, again, here's my information. Hit me up. Thank you.